Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell here, and the Bank of Canada just cancelled its biggest program worth billions of dollars every single month in response to inflation, meaning your money is losing value each and every day, skyrocketing home prices, and even some accusations from certain politicians that the Bank of Canada has been colluding with the government. All major problems. But in a rare interview that just aired today with the Governor of the Bank of Canada, he was asked some pretty challenging questions. So in today's video, we're going to go over the highlights from this interview, including questions like, was the Bank of Canada the one who was responsible for all this inflation, their response to that accusation, what the Bank of Canada is going to do about these rising home prices, and also at the end, we're going to talk about how you can personally set yourself up to actually benefit from some of these changes. But before we do, I wanted to let you know about my brand new second channel that has just launched. It's all going to be on digital assets and cryptocurrency. There's so much misinformation in that space, so I'm excited to start this channel up. Make sure to follow me there if you're interested in that sort of thing. But now we have to start with the elephant in the room for the Bank of Canada, and that's inflation. They originally said that this is only going to be short-lived, this higher inflation, but now they're saying that as of the recent numbers, the 4.5% inflation could be around to stay a while and could even go up. Let's listen in.
Well, a week ago we put out a new economic projection for Canada. And we do have inflation. It's running 4.5% now. We think it's going to go up to close to 5%. And then over the course of next year, we think as we get to around the end of next year, it's going to be around 2%. So that's what we mean by transitory but not short-lived.
So they're saying that eventually down the road it'll start to come down, but what about people who are struggling with the rising cost of living right now?
The rising prices we're seeing for mostly internationally traded goods, that is stretching people's ability to stretch their income to pay their bills. I do want to assure Canadians that we are going to keep inflation under control. We know what our job is. Our job is to make sure that the increases we're seeing in globally traded prices today don't turn into generalized and enduring inflation in Canada. And we have the tools, we have the mandate, and we have been, and we will be adjusting our tools to bring inflation back to target.
Now, even with this reassurance from the Bank of Canada that they're going to handle inflation, a lot of people are still concerned and are wondering if the Bank of Canada even has control of the situation. And this is a question that is highlighted here by Evan Solomon.
Are you in control? If inflation is global supply chains, global COVID issues, tensions with China, there's a lot of juggling balls that everyone in this building and you are trying to figure out. So people say, well, boy, the governor seems confident, but is the governor in control?
We've said for all along it's going to be choppy, it's going to be bumpy, and it is. But are we in control? Yes, we're in control. We have the tools, we are using them. Last week we took some important steps to adjust our monetary settings, and we're going to continue to adjust our monetary settings. And the goal here is to secure that complete recovery and bring inflation back to target.
But what are these monetary tools and settings that Tiff Macklem is talking about? Well, that all relates to the program worth billions of dollars every single month that is recently being cut by the Bank of Canada, and that's called quantitative easing. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, to support the economy, the Bank of Canada started adding around $5 billion per week to the Canadian financial system. Essentially, what they do through this quantitative easing program is create all this new money that the Bank of Canada then goes out and purchases Government of Canada bonds with. As a result, this drives down the interest rate on those Government of Canada bonds and drives down the interest rates for many things across the Canadian economy. Now, the idea is that this is to support the economy because when we have low interest rates, it makes it cheap to borrow money, and potentially businesses can borrow more money and expand and hire more people, and as a result, the economy would be supported. But on the flip side of that, these low interest rates have allowed people to more easily borrow more money to buy real estate, causing the run-up of the housing prices that we've seen in many parts of Canada. Now, on top of this, some people even accuse the Bank of Canada's quantitative easing program, this bond buying, as being the thing that is actually causing this inflation. And even further, some politicians have pointed out that because they're purchasing the Bank of Canada bonds, bonds and essentially funding the government, some people are accusing Tiff Macklem and the Bank of Canada of colluding with the Trudeau government to help them fund their pandemic programs like the CRB and other financial supports. Now, this is all highlighted and questioned here again in this hard-hitting interview. Now that the Bank of Canada is seeing these frighteningly high interest rates, they've turned off the faucet for this quantitative easing program, and some critics believe that this is a confirmation and an admission of guilt that they actually have been the cause of some of these major issues. Let's listen in on the interview.
The allegation is that the, quote, printing of money, quantitative easing, the buying of bonds to increase the money supply that people may hear about, is actually one of the key causes, and that rolling it back has vindicated the critics that say at the behest of the Trudeau government, the Bank of Canada is, quote, printing money, and that's caused inflation. Of course, the bank is independent from the government. But what do you make of those criticisms, and what's the response to your policies are causing inflation?
Over a year ago, at the start of the pandemic, inflation was actually negative. The big fear was deflation. We took extraordinary measures to help Canadians get through this, support that recovery, and to a large extent it's worked. Obviously, fiscal policy has played an important role as well. With respect to quantitative easing, yes, it's a new tool. It's not the same thing. We're not printing banknotes to buy government bonds. We are creating settlement balances, which is a kind of central bank money. But the important message to Canadians is quantitative easing, buying government bonds, is just a different way of lowering interest rates.
In my opinion, this is a pretty frustrating response from the governor. He's essentially saying, oh no, we're not printing any money. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. We're just trying to lower interest rates, and we're using these fancy things called settlement balances. He's essentially gambling that Canadians won't understand the workings of this quantitative easing program. Now, back in February, I made a video explaining all the details of this, and there'll be a link in the description, and you can also click there to check it out. But essentially what's happening is that the Bank of Canada, while they're not printing paper money, they are creating this special money, otherwise called settlement balances, just by typing a couple zeros on their computer. And eventually this money trickles its way through the system into the broader Canadian monetary system, causing the money that you have in your bank account to go down in value because it's diluted by all of this new money that's now in the system. So while the Bank of Canada shrugs off this accusation, I do personally believe that their quantitative easing program, or these monetary settings, have at least been part of the reason we've seen such high inflation as of late. And personally, I believe that the Bank of Canada knows this too, but they just never say it out loud. And as I mentioned before, the lower interest rates caused by this Bank of Canada program have also allowed housing prices to run away over the past 2 years. Now let's listen in to hear what the Bank of Canada thinks the problem is and if they're going to do anything about it.
We have for some time expressed concern about housing. It is a vulnerability here in Canada. Some households are overstretching to get that house. It was a vulnerability before the pandemic.
Right.
The pandemic has actually increased demand for bigger houses because we've been spending so much time at home. People are working at home, children are studying at home, people want bigger houses, and interest rates are low, and that is fueling strong demand for housing. And there is a risk you get into these extrapolative expectations. People have a fear of missing out. I get letters from Canadians, I get letters from young families. I recognize people are having a hard time, and really, the solution to this problem is supply. We've got to increase supply of housing. We've been in this for about a decade in Canada, and I am pleased to see that there is greater recognition around Ottawa in the provinces that really the solution is we've got to accelerate supply.
Now, he doesn't comment on how the low interest rates caused by the Bank of Canada's program is what's really driven up the housing prices, but I do agree that one of the potential solutions for this is building more homes, increasing the supply of homes. But that's a lot easier said than done, especially with NIMBYism in many areas. Now, NIMBYism, this stands for not in my backyardism. Essentially, many people are in support of building new houses until it's happening in their backyard, until it's happening in their neighborhood. then all of a sudden, many people will fight against the proposed buildings that are going in this area to increase housing supply. On top of this, building new homes is more of a local issue, and municipal governments often make it very difficult to apply for new building permits, making it even slower to build these new homes that we drastically need if we're going to have lower house prices and having the younger generation actually be able to afford a home to live in. Now, that QE program that many people believe has caused some of these issues, well, it's been stopped, but the Bank of Canada says that they're going to leave that amount of money that they've funneled into the system where it is. Essentially, whenever the bonds that they own expire or they get their money back for them, they're just going to take that money and repurchase more Government of Canada bonds, so we could be seeing inflation for a longer amount of time than we all think. One thing that you can do to set yourself up to actually benefit from this and protect yourself against the dilution that's happening with inflation is to own assets and own as many assets as you possibly can. This isn't financial advice, and you'll never hear financial advice on this channel, but as a result of programs like this across the world, we've seen a dramatic increase in the value of all kinds of assets, whether it's stocks or index ETFs or real estate or digital assets like Ethereum and Bitcoin. All of these assets that you can hold could potentially save you from this inflation issue that everyone across the country is dealing with. And speaking of crypto, if you didn't do it at the beginning of the video and you found this video valuable, make sure to subscribe to my second channel down there where I'm going to be more covering in depth all of that sort of digital asset world and why I think that it's some game-changing tech that underneath the top layer of speculation and get rich quick, there's actually some incredible opportunities there. So check that out in the description if you didn't before. And obviously there's a lot to take away from this interview, and I'm curious what you think about it. What are the main problems that we're facing today as a society, and is the government and is the Bank of Canada doing enough to actually combat this? Let me know in the description. I read every single one and I try to reply to as many as I can. But with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope this video has helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.